Well, good afternoon here on the East Coast, and good morning to everyone else across the US today. I want to say thanks and welcome to another XenTegra webinar. Um, Today we're got a fun one. We're recapping what happened this year at Nutanix .next. .next is the Nutanix event of the year, once a year. Last year it was held in Barcelona. This year it was held in Washington, D.C. And myself, a bunch of our team members, a lot of our clients, and friends at Nutanix all gathered together at the convention center in downtown DC. And so this is our opportunity to just kind of talk about what news came out and bring you up to date, talk about things that are coming in the future, because that's always a fun part of a big industry conference like .next. And so we'll go ahead and kick it off today. My name's Phil Sellers. I'm the practice director for Modern Data Center here at XenTegra. I live and I'm based out of the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I've got about 25 years of experience, which means that beard in the picture is a lot grayer today than when I was coloring it. So I was really surprised to be Nutanix 2003 Partner Sales Engineer of the Year. And a fun fact about me is I lived in the golf capital of the world. If you don't know where that's Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It may be self-proclaimed golf capital, but fun fact, I can't play golf. But I'm also joined today with a friend of mine from Nutanix. If you listen to our Nutanix podcast, Nutanix Weekly, you'll recognize Jaira Cox. Jaira, appreciate you being with us. Could you introduce yourself for the folks on the webinar?
Thank you, man. I almost sent you a newer headshot, but let's keep with the theme of beards that used to have a lot more pigment in them. Not fun fact, if Back to the Future was made right now, it would jump back to 1995. Think about that. But yeah, I live in the Raleigh area. Been here at Nutanix for 8 years, but doing Nutanix themed designs and solutions for actually a little over 11 years. And fun fact, really fun fact, is that my first Nutanix customer ever from 11 years ago is still a Nutanix customer. So I'm a principal architect here covering the Americas and having a blast doing that. And also on our launch teams to help onboard new external storage partners and lead briefings on that kind of topic. And yeah, I can reference individual Star Trek episodes by name and not just say like, oh yeah, the one with the blah 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 blah.
That's a true Trekkie. I gotta say that definitely high on the nerd meter there, Jaira.
Thank you. I'll take that as it was intended.
Oh, that was intended as a compliment. Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, we're going to kick off today and tell you a little bit about who XenTegra is. We like to recap this in case this is your first interaction with us. And so I'm going to roll right into that. XenTegra was born out of a need for true customer enablement and true partnership. We were founded in 2012, and so happy anniversary. This is our 13th year, just turned 13. And we were specifically focused on helping businesses with their Citrix environment. Since then, we've grown to be an international company with expertise across your entire technology landscape. We're headquartered out of Charlotte, North Carolina, but we've got offices in Canada and India, and we've got client executives across the nation. We like to say we're a global company with a right next door feel. We're on a mission to engage, listen, and deliver appropriate enterprise technologies to clients of all sizes because we believe every organization, regardless of size, deserves access to enterprise technology. And we're doing that by striving to be something we call VAR 2.0, breaking the mold of the traditional transactional VAR and focusing on your success and being a real partner for you. How we get there is by building community. That's been one of our hallmarks from the beginning, hosting fun educational events all across the nation. And every week we probably have 4 to 5 different events going on. We also host podcasts, which I mentioned. Jaira and I often get together and have some fun talking Nutanix with industry experts. And so you can listen from anywhere and stay up to date. We also like to provide industry access to big conferences like Nutanix Next by giving you, our clients, 90% off ticket prices just for meeting with us so that you can network and learn from your peers at this event. We also provide micro assessments complimentary for our core technologies. And it's a great way to make sure you're following best practices and also that you get to know our team and our expertise. And lastly, we are trying to do that by providing you choice and being your one-stop shop partner for all your IT needs. If you need it, we're here to help. It's kind of funny having a quote from myself in the slide deck, but here it is. I like to say we're a little bit like Ace Hardware. We're probably a little more curated about what we've got on the shelf, and hopefully we're a little more knowledgeable than your typical big box store. Here at XenTegra, we specialize in your success. And so what that means is we've aligned our business across multiple practices. I run the modern data center practice, but I've got peers that focus in on modern applications like ServiceNow, security and networking with industry leading products like our um, Purple Team and tabletop exercises when it comes to security. And then, of course, we're still the same company that's always focused deeply on EUC. And so our modern workspaces division focuses on anything VDI. Our managed services wrap across all of these different divisions, including one specifically for small business. And so we're here to meet you no matter where you are. Speaking of managed services, you never have to go at it alone. We have a wide range of support, managed, and hybrid services, everything from the data center to the endpoint to the cloud. Our architect on the managed services side, Brian Clark, says, would you rather find a brand new pilot to fly your plane or a pilot that's always flown thousands of hours before? We're those experts. We're those pilots to help you do that every single day. And while we're there, we're also doing a little good on the side. So we've got something called XenTegra Cares, where we try to give back into the community, and it's two-pronged. When we're hosting an event, we will work with a local charity, but we also want to work with nonprofits to make sure they get the same enterprise technology at a discounted price. And so that's our way of giving back through XenTegra Cares. We're known for working well with others. We do lots of partnerships, but like I said, we don't cover everything and we don't carry everyone. We're focused on these technologies as our primary technologies, and there's a lot of depth in every one of these because we adopt them in-house, and that makes us different than other technology partners you may encounter. And lastly, our awards speak for themselves. We've got awards across all sorts of different things over the years, including Citrix Worldwide Partner of the Year. Uh, we've got multiple cloud champions from Nutanix. And this last year, we were named ServiceNow Reseller Partner of the Year for the Americas. So we know our model works. Some hard work in our partnerships with clients and partners, it brings it all together. And that's the XenTegra difference. So thanks for bearing with me for a quick introduction. We certainly want to know you if we've not worked together before. We think we're a different type of company, and hopefully that aligns with your philosophy too. So Jaira, as we talk about Nutanix.next, it was a week-long, well, what, 3-day event? What kind of sticks out to you as the best part of the week?
I think back fondly on the really high energy I just saw from all the attendees, right? Like during sessions, between sessions, folks making an effort to, attend the breakouts, do the labs, get the certifications, folks just really actively engaging, which, I would say is just not something I see at every industry tech and trade show that I do manage to weasel into. So that was really wonderful to see.
Yeah, and you do a lot. I know you were with a partner last week at an event. I'm going to gather I'm going to guess you probably didn't make it to VMware Explore last year, did you?
I did not. I was in Vegas at that time, but for a partner conference,
That's
not
right.
that one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was across town. I was there, and I'll be completely blunt and honest. There was no energy, not like there was for .next. .next was a completely different feel for an event. The energy had left the room for VMware Explore, and so it is interesting for me to compare the two events because you guys play in very similar spaces, and there's really no comparison between what we experienced in May at .next with the announcements and the enthusiasm and all the new folks that were just clamoring to learn more about what Nutanix is doing. It was really cool to be a part of that.
It's great to see. We can't do this without the community.
Yeah. Well, in terms of announcements and things that we heard from the week, there were a few big categories that we kind of uh, talked about. And one of those happened to have been on your intro slide, and that's the topic of external storage. So, as we kind of talk about announcements, I'd love to start there and just kind of unwrap what is this crazy HCI company doing with external storage, and how's that changing the game?
Yeah, it was very exciting, right? It was perhaps a bit less shock and awe than, let's say, last year, right, in Barcelona when we first announced our very first partnership, right, with PowerFlex, and that was, nothing I think will ever top the excitement and the shock of like, wait, what? We're doing who with what and where and why? But then it was great, yeah, to come back this year and fulfill that promise, right, around the PowerFlex partnership going GA. I actually was on a call today this morning helping a customer get that deployed. And then also, of course, announcing our second partnership with Pure Storage as well. Also very exciting. And I did have the opportunity to go then to the Pure Accelerate show a couple weeks back and meet with folks there. And again, tons of buzz, tons of excitement there as well. Our booth was had a kind of a line for people to come ask questions the entire time that we were open and doing booth duty. So yeah, very exciting to now have this model where we can now work with customers more closely in a really financial asset reuse motion, right? Of like, let's say you've got something here that does storage today. That thing might be 18 months old, might be, 2.5 years old. It's only mid-cycle through its life cycle, and yet you want to make other changes in your data center around the platform, around the hypervisor strategy. What can we now do together that before was more of a challenging financial proposal, right? For me to walk in and say, our platform is awesome and great, and here's what it does. Oh, and by the way, you need to migrate fully onto it. And that was just, let's say at best, a bit more challenging from a asset governance and lifecycle perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Two very different platforms here we're talking about too. Again, fulfilling PowerFlex, which was announced a year ago, going GA with support for PowerFlex. That was the first big announcement. PowerFlex is a scale out architecture, not unlike your AOS. But then you took it a step forward, and now you've got a dual controller external storage array with Pure, and you're going to be offering support for that probably later this year, early
Yep.
next. So, not GA, but there's an early access program for customers, and there's a lot of excitement around that. You know, with this, is it just that you're offering the AHV hypervisor there, or are you actually offering more value when we start talking about the external storage?
Great question. Yeah, so it is more than just a hypervisor, right? Because under the hood, we're not even teaching AHV, our hypervisor, to speak external storage.
Hmm,
We're actually teaching the CVM to speak external storage, right? So that in some ways is actually a simplifying and even more technically elegant way to get to market faster, right? Because all the intelligence that's built in the CVM stays there and doesn't need to get rehomed, if you will. So as the CVM now learns to speak a second flavor of external storage with Pure Storage, that means that we keep all the goodness that's in what we call our cloud infrastructure and cloud management stack, all still fully in play. So yes, of course, hypervisor running your VMs, but also our software-defined networking stack for VPCs, overlays, underlays, cloud-like networking, all of our microsegmentation stack for VM security and moving towards a zero trust model, native disaster recovery, automation reporting, and cloud-like operating model, right? Even down to like VM cost governance. So hypervisor, yes. Hypervisor plus 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 plus.
Yeah, this isn't a hypervisor conversation. That's what I love telling customers coming out of this is it's so much more goodness than that. And that is the elegance of what you guys chose to do. From an architecture standpoint, you again have made the hypervisor kind of transparent. Not that it doesn't matter, it serves a very important role, but it's not the key determining factor here. You're providing an entire stack of software, a portfolio, and external storage doesn't change that. It's just able to benefit from all of those additional products. It's
Yeah,
great.
we used to have a kind of discrete campaign around that, how AHD was invisible in the stack. And even now, as it's the driving factor that folks most want to get out of a migration to our platform, it still kind of remains invisible, right? It is totally there. It's enterprise ready. It's 10 plus years old. It has all the enterprise grade features and bells and whistles that people want. And I think it still has a grand total of, I think, one checkbox in our entire UI for actual hypervisor management.
Right. Well, it doesn't end there. With the tight integration that Cisco and Pure Storage have also always had on the VMware side of the house, they also announced FlashStack with Nutanix. So, what's that about?
Yeah, love to see this. So when we do launch this, like you said, closer to end of year, we'll have a number of hardware partners available with this. But Cisco, I call them easily the loudest, right? The most excited. They're leaning in the most. They've pre-announced this like flash stack integration and their UCS portfolio that will be able to join this part of the design. So yeah, customers that have flash stack today, where it's UCS with Pure Storage in their racks today can swap out just the software layer, right, and move on to the Nutanix stack there, keep the UCS compute that they already have, keep the Pure Storage array that they already have, and just make a software-defined change. So very, very exciting to see that for sure. And thanks to Cisco for leaning in so much, so loudly.
Yeah, underlines that key point you made earlier. This is really around reuse and extension of hardware assets and those investments for customers. Well, that wasn't the only thing that we learned. We also talked a lot about applications and, Nutanix, like us here at XenTegra, got its start really being a great platform for EUC. So we've got a couple EUC announcements too. First up, since we are a Citrix shop historically, we've got stronger Citrix integration with Nutanix. And so, just kind of looking at that announcement, there were scale issues. I don't want to say issues. There were some limitations, right? You had to connect every single Nutanix cluster to your Citrix environment. And now we've got the ability to connect against Prism Central. We're able to do some acceleration and things. Um, this partnership has been the result of years of co-engineering between the two companies. What's in the latest announcements to benefit Citrix customers?
So, what's really great here that I'm excited about is modernizing that connection, right? You've been able to run Citrix extremely well, very performantly with lots of functionality on our platform for a long time. That's been from an admin level a connection made from Prism from the Citrix control plane to each individual Nutanix cluster, right? With this update, now not only is the integration even more native, right? You'll see just Nutanix as a first-class citizen inside things like Studio, but also a better fleet management approach, right? So now that the Citrix control plane connects to Prism Central, that can now connect to my entire data center or my entire availability zone. That lets me do things much more broadly, and even let it leverage some other enhancements that we have coming out, like placement policies for our VM templates, right? So then as things like Studio use constructs like our VM templates for VM creation for desktop delivery, that lets things just happen effectively, more quickly, more simply, and more predictably all of the time.
Yeah, it's huge for scale for our customers that have larger environments, multiple clusters. This just is making it more of an easy button to deploy and manage, and that's great to see. Continued fruits of this co-engineering that's been going on for a while. Somewhat new to the party, I guess, is Omnissa. And if that's not a name that you're familiar with, well, what about VMware? This is Omnissa Horizon. It's the divested EUC portion of VMware. When Broadcom acquired them, they spun off EUC at VMware into this new company called Omnissa. So Horizon is the product. It started out, I think, life as View and then was rebranded as Horizon. Um, but it's always had that requirement of VMware. That's not necessarily a requirement moving forward, is it, Jira?
That changes, right? So I guess we can almost lump these under software asset reuse in some ways to rhyme with the first part of our talk.
Sure.
Um, if you already are invested and you love your broker, there's now much more of a path here for keep the broker you know and love and change out that infrastructure substrate, right? The hypervisor, the storage, the replication, the automation framework. Um, yeah, but and make that invisible to your end users, right? So not a compulsory change anymore. Love to see this as well, right? Thanks to our new friends at Omnissa bringing Horizon to the party as a first-class citizen, delivering another second awesome broker choice that can run on top of the Nutanix stack.
Yeah, it's really good to see. I've long known folks over in the EUC camp at VMware and now in Omnissa, and last year as they were going independent, there were questions about where should we go, what should we integrate with, and my transparent feedback was you need to talk to Nutanix. I mean, out of the gate.
Well,
So
thanks
I'm
to you,
really
Phil, as
happy
well
to see
then.
this coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's another better together story, right? And um, for Horizon customers, even older versions were technically able to do things on AHV and on the Nutanix platform. What we're talking about here is exactly what we described with Citrix. It's first party support with the ability to call into APIs and have that strong integration for large scale pools and management. It's not some and then kind of afterthought. It is a true first party integration between the two platforms, which is great to see.
Yeah, the operational experience matters, right? That's how you get scale and efficiency. So, when you call Omnissa and say I'm on AHV, they say, "Oh, sure, great." Not what's that? Um, and then the automation to be able to build those desktops at scale versus like doing like a manual in-guest installation. Yeah, that really matters.
Yeah, 100%. Um, whoops, looks like I changed slides. Let me go back. Um, there we go. So we're also talking a little bit about security here too. So not just application reuse, but you're extending support with Palo Alto. Where is that integration happening?
Yeah, so in our network fabric, we are making it easier and better to do things like service chaining, right, and do more functional security implementations on the platform much more easily, and of course, even with great partners like our friends at Palo Alto. So maybe you would use something like Nutanix microseg to do stuff like up to a layer four blocking of traffic, right? Just like prod and dev environments shouldn't talk to each other, or my web server should only talk to its backend application server. But again, layer four. So if I want to do even more interesting things like WAF functionality or
Mhm.
decrypt my SSL, right? Or do things like geo blocking, well, that needs to happen at a smarter, higher level in the stack. So within our ability to do service chaining and even now in our latest release, even do that through the GUI and Prism to say, hey, look, if this is a certain kind of packet, I want you to pass that over to Palo Alto and only have the resultant packets that they allow out of a virtualized firewall then reach the web server. That's just even better for security at every level, for automation at every level, and ultimately for, service availability and uptime, which is really, of course, that's job number one.
Yeah, so this is flow networking integration with Palo, but also other integrations as well. You mentioned um, the layer 7 type inspection and being able to push things off, but there's also validation for the Palo Alto SD-WAN that comes along with this announcement. And secure access, which is also another, the Palo Alto Cloud, Prisma access, and things like that. All of those things becoming a more integrated solution with Nutanix as part of that core.
Yeah, all true.
This is fantastic news for Palo customers. They hold a large percentage of the security market today and have a great reputation. So that's been really, really great to see.
Very much so. Yeah. I mean, again, in, I would say widening that path, making it, paving it more smoothly to say now you can move on to Nutanix and AHV and not need to reinvent the security wheel for the entire environment.
Yeah. Well, next up is talking about clouds, our favorite topic. We love to be cloudy because at the core, Nutanix is a cloud platform. And so more clouds. I'm going to go in reverse order here. Uh, there was a new announcement about NC2 for Google Cloud. And that kind of rounds out the choice of the large hyperscale vendors. Previously, NC2 was supported on AWS and Azure. What's different about the Google Cloud experience?
So coming with Google Cloud now, we're going to have, like you said, all the top three major cloud providers, all the hyperscalers, and I do like your, we're a cloud too, right? So it's very like cloud on top of cloud, cloudception sort of thinking. But with Google now, right? Really, any of the big three we can now use. You could use one for prod, use one for DR. You could do prod on-prem and use cloud for DR target. Also, extremely popular move these days. And with Google now, right, that will really let us help our customers design the most resilient silo deployments. We saw it in the headlines a couple weeks ago, right, where we saw a cloud outage at one cloud take
Mhm.
out Cloudflare as a service, which then affected another cloud as well, right? So that cross-cloud DR, how do I keep this up in the face of, bad weather on the internet, right, and things that are beyond my control? Now gives our customers a lot more control to be able to do that. So yeah, it's been a frequent ask that I've gotten from my role in the field for a number of years. Very glad to now be able to say that yes, this is coming. It's right around the corner to say yes, Nutanix on the cloud of your choice.
Yeah. Important to note, this is in public preview currently. So GCP customers and Nutanix customers could request to be part of the program. It will be coming in GA access later. But we talked a little bit about this announcement on a recent podcast episode. It also gives you more choice as a client, as a customer, to locate your resources closest to those differentiated services that only exist in one cloud or the other. So, something that Azure's doing different or something that Google Compute is doing different, you can now have the choice to move your data around between those clouds and have it right next to those special services, whether it's an AI or ML type service that you can consume. That's also another great element of choice you're delivering for customers.
Yeah, I mean that landscape changes pretty darn fast. And
Mm,
so offering that workload mobility, right, to say, when your data scientists say we'd rather move from model X to model Y to model Z, and maybe that means a cross-cloud type of migration, that now can become a very easy type of migration on Nutanix, right? Maybe even not even have to re-IP your VMs, even as you migrate them, or VMs or services or container workloads or anything, as you move them from cloud to cloud to cloud. So, or use them all in parallel, right, and optimize workloads on placement for that.
So, in addition to the GCP news, we've got a few other announcements that came out during .next in terms of AWS and Azure. First up of those is continuing development of MST. For people like myself who maybe aren't overly aware of what MST is, what is this and how does it apply to NC2 and clouds in general?
Yeah, something I'm very glad to see now going GA for our customers to use. MST, and it stands for Multi-Cloud Snapshot Technology, is us teaching our Nutanix clusters, really wherever they run, how to speak cloud storage, namely like S3 object storage, and how to therefore replicate to more um, more commoditized, lower cost, more highly available types of cloud storage. So that, of course, the ability to run a Nutanix cluster in cloud still exists as a DR target. But I also now have an option at a lower cost, lower price point to replicate to cloud storage for longer retention, for maybe a lower cost DR solution. I'll build a cluster on demand when I declare a disaster so that I can now have more coverage for more of my applications at a lower cost from what I build in the cloud there. So MST to S3 storage is a huge enabler for how do I start using cloud as a DR target, right? And maybe get out of this concept of just I build two data centers and I use half of each one
Right.
type of financial prospect that we've been doing in IT for, well, a long time at this point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was in an active situation in one of the previous roles I was in, and so very true about 50% capacity so that we could roll one side to another. It's not the best use of hardware investment, offers some benefits for sure. There were a lot of days when, what was it you said? Weather on the internet.
Yeah.
Let's just say where other conditions in our data centers, let's say power or cooling, maybe weren't where they needed to be, and we needed to roll resources. There's a huge benefit for that kind of thing, but it's hard to maintain and it's costly.
Yeah. I mean, IT stewardship really, and not to get dramatically philosophical here, IT stewardship is the fight against entropy, right? Just like something's going to go wrong at some point on a long enough timeline and having a plan to address that. And what's nice now is that optionality, right? So we can certainly do some workloads across data centers that would be active, other workloads on the exact same cluster that might replicate to cloud, right? So I don't need to size and totally copy one data center to another. I can get much more tailored, right, and customized on that placement and on that sizing now much more granularly.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't the only goodness. We also received some good news in terms of Elastic SAN for Azure. This is something that exists today in AWS, where we can basically connect external storage to the Nitro card in an AWS node. And if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like an iDRAC or an ILO or a IPMI on steroids because it's doing tons and tons of functions for those AWS bare metal nodes. What's Elasticsearch for Azure look like?
Yeah, zooming out to the why for just 1 second, like to when I use Nutanix on bare metal nodes in cloud, I have to use what's available right by that cloud provider, and there's some differentiation there from cloud to cloud. But fundamentally, it's if you wanted 10 or 12 or 14 NVMe drives per node, you get what's already there in the data center ready for you to use. Not a lot of customizability with this functionality, right? That now, of course, launches on Azure, joining what we had on AWS. Is an
Mhm.
ability to create an HCI cluster that also does consume other storage in the data center that is not in the nodes physically, right? Therefore, I can now tailor that for workloads to say I can run maybe fewer nodes, right? But also address more storage as a DR target. Or if my live workloads, running workloads, or need more storage than what I can fit into those nodes, I now no longer need to add additional nodes to get that capacity. I can just get the capacity that my workloads require. So lots more flexibility and ability to really fine tune and hone in on what is an optimized style design, which therefore should also yield an optimized price point for consumption as well, so that it's just a general higher quality design across the board. So yeah, I love to see this now coming live on Azure as well.
Well, our friends at AWS didn't miss out on some news too. We got a new type of hardware from AWS, and it's a really nice addition, I think, to our choices. AWS announced their i7 bare metal nodes during .next. That's a pretty decent leap forward. I think we had our choices between i3 and i4, so i7 is a pretty welcome addition.
Wonderful, love to see it, right? Because I mean, obviously, hardware doesn't sit still; it keeps on getting better and improving. And in fact, this might be one of the easiest ways. Let me think about that. Yeah, this might be one of the easiest ways in the world, right, to pull off an Nutanix hardware refresh.
Mhm.
Is of course running the Nutanix stack on a hardware as a service style model, where I go into my portal and say I want a couple of new nodes of this newer form factor, new type, newer hardware pedigree. I add them to my cluster, it expands, I eject the older nodes, and I give them back to the cloud provider. And I didn't have to send anyone in the data center at all, right? I didn't even cut a PO for any of this. I just changed my monthly consumption from A to B to C. So, and my workloads just benefit by getting better, faster hardware, running faster, getting more density. It's pretty wonderful, right? So it's software as a service, meaning hardware as a service, and you getting the operational benefits of both.
Yeah, these new processors also include Intel's AMX or Advanced Matrix Extensions. That's uh, I don't want to call pseudo AI, but a set of extensions that allow AI to run on actual processors without the full need of GPUs. That's also a welcome mix from an i7 standpoint. So it's going to be interesting to see how it impacts AI workloads because as we've talked about before, power, performance, data center space, all of those are constraints that we're dealing with the AI revolution.
GPU availability, you know, w cost modeling, right? Effectiveness. Like, yes, all AI could run on GPUs. What AI can run off of GPUs as well, right? I see customers trying both at the exact same time and trying to right size and tailor that placement, that workload. So yeah, I love to see it as more of a landing ground for where can I place AI workloads.
Yeah, 100%. Um, like you said, I mean, I've done labs and stuff. It works. It's slower, but AMX is something that maybe can level the playing field and give us a little more access. Because I was helping my son shop for a GPU, and they're a premium price these days. So
Interesting times these days.
for sure. While we're on the topic of clouds, let's talk about cloud native orchestration and Kubernetes a little bit. We've talked about this a couple of times before, but I think there's a couple of really cool announcements that we heard from Nutanix partnering with the community here. So NKP, of course, has been on the market now for a year or so, maybe longer. That's your completely opinionated Nutanix end-to-end Kubernetes stack. So for folks in the infrastructure space, give me the 50,000-foot view of NKP and Kubernetes. What is it? What does it solve for us?
Hmm. I think of Kubernetes as solving for how do I automate my application deployments in a repeatable, scalable way, right? When I need a little bit of an application, that's repeatable and predictable. When I need 100 times as much application, that's repeatable and predictable. When I need to rev and upgrade or deploy the next version of that little bit or a huge application, again, still repeatable and predictable. So that, we always thinking back to like our VM based roots, not Nutanix, but I mean you and I, like it always was sort of like we knew the most right answer was we needed to automate everything, right? But automating everything from deploy the VM to call into the VM to deploy an application was heavy, right? And with Kubernetes, the entire thing is built to be automatable, built to be extensible from day one, right? Like the right way to deploy applications on Kubernetes is via automation, right? You can deploy by hand, but you're almost making your life harder than it should be, right? And the better way to do it is to automate it, which really gives everyone a path to getting all the way up to like infrastructure as code, right? Like if I can do it the most right way, then when my developer fixes a bug or ships a new version of an application, maybe it's just changing one line of code, but it's enhancing it in some way. I can go all the way from that person on their laptop writing a new version of the app or committing it to something that can be automatically tested, automatically proved as useful and an enhancement to the current state of the application, to then deployed in a test environment, automatically deployed in a production environment, and all the way up to my users start using that application. They never know that there was a change or a downtime, right? That's the platonic ideal. And with Kubernetes now, there's automation for every step along the way to do that in a predictable fashion with controlled releases, with observability, with monitoring. So it's coming from an old infrastructure guy, right? I think of it as the most fashionable way to currently install applications, right? For lots of good benefits, right? Like it used to be you wrote every line of source code by yourself, and then it became, I download the MSI and I next finish, and then it became, clone the repo right locally, and then modify it and run it, and now it's write your YAML files, point them, give them over to Kubernetes, and let your applications auto deploy themselves, right? So it's I say fashionable in a good way, not a bad way. It's finding mindshare among developers and infrastructure folks for all the right reasons, right? It's good differentiation of job roles, good separation of infrastructure versus development versus operations. So with that, it is a very, very cloudy way to run applications. We being a
Mhm.
cloud platform, of course, and this is back to how you open it, Phil. We of course have that too, right? So the most cloud native way to run applications in a cloud platform is through Kubernetes, and our cloud platform has that as well. Um, NKP, right, which we did acquire, yeah, a bit over a year ago, is actually way older than that, right? Of course, they were their own very awesome company with a ton of user installations that now, of course, they just joined the Nutanix family, right? And now we can offer that same NKP, the Nutanix Kubernetes platform, really to all of our customers. Um, One of the coolest changes here that we announced at the show is that partnership with Canonical now. So, like, of course, containers want to run on some kind of an OS. That is the container host there, whether that's in a VM or on bare metal. And to date, we've had options for our customers around, did you want Rocky Linux or did you want to bring your own RHEL license? Now, fun to have a third option, right? Around now we can also offer Ubuntu Pro, right? Which of course is Ubuntu with and all the benefits of Pro from a support standpoint, lifecycle standpoint, up to what a 10-year
Mhm.
promise of security patch availability, which is like awesome in the enterprise space. And even fun stuff like their kernel live patching and like landscape fleet management from Canonical, all now as part of that substrate, right? The actual OS that your security team would scan and see, that your VMs would see and running on top of, that's now Ubuntu. So if that's your flavor of Linux now, we're all about choice, and we're happy to help support that as well.
Yeah, and again, the choice factor is huge, and so this is part of the evolution of Nutanix as a company. You're now we see it across multiple different parts of the company, but you're taking services, you're taking sub-services inside of Prism. All of those things are being rewritten using containers and Kubernetes as a platform. You as a company have embraced this cloud native, very scalable way of doing things. And that's also starting to come to market for customers in the form of cloud native AOS. So taking everything we just talked about, the partnership with Canonical, that whole style of deploying and writing software. Now, what is this cloud native AOS? We know what AOS is. That's the storage system. That's the core, the heart of NCI. What's cloud native AOS?
So yeah, excellent point. So my apps, however I run them, need storage, right? They need to be able to save data and then retrieve it later on. That hopefully that's not news to anybody on this call. We at Nutanix, of course, have a way to do that, right? It's called our AOS storage fabric that runs in a controller VM. By nature of being a VM, today it needs a hypervisor. So how do we take our storage fabric, which is awesome, 15 years old, 28,000 customers globally, and now bring that to new areas that might be differently shaped? So how can I have that when I'm running containers on bare metal? How do I bring that to the cloud in a lighter weight fashion than running, say, a full-on NC2 cluster like with our friends on bare metal instances that now coming soon, all three hyperscalers? And the answer to that is we run our container fabric, we run our storage fabric on containers that we call Cloud Native AOS. So it's still the AOS goodness that we know and love. It's resilient, it scales out, it's performant, but it no longer needs to run on a virtual machine on a hypervisor, right? So with Cloud Native AOS, we can now offer a cloud storage fabric that now can stretch from on-prem to the cloud, can now run and offer services for containers even on bare metal. Huge for
Mhm.
manufacturing, huge for edge use cases, right? What if I don't even want to run VMs in the first place, but I also want to be, in the Nutanix stack and in the family there for my entire data estate? Well, now Cloud Native AOS lets me run my container storage services and my containers even because we can also do NKP on bare metal. Right there with really maybe no virtualization in play if that's not required for your solution. So more flexibility, more places to store more data, and even support migrations as well, right? The journey we're on is really helping to make container migration and DR as easy as we've made it for VM migration and DR already, right? Because I mean, my own 2 cents as a technologist is that VMs are going to outlast you and I in IT, right? But they're also going to live right next to containers in perpetuity. So how do we help make wrangling both sides of the house here as as easy and as robust for applications of any size and shape?
Yeah, I love that example. VMs are definitely going to outlast us. I honestly believe the mainframes are going to outlast us too, Jair. So
Yeah,
if that's
and
any
VMs along with them.
indication, those VMs are going to live right next to the mainframes. So let's take that from concept to something a little more approachable. First product to market within cloud native AOS is really your files product. And so what's different about Nutanix files running on NCI versus Nutanix files running on, say, AWS?
So yeah, not pictured on this slide, but yeah, for sure, like about that spreading the fabric out even more for customers where their workload might be non-persistent VDI. So therefore, all they really care about is I need a gold image and I need the file shares themselves, right? The whole my user identities, profiles, and maybe like application working shares as well. Um, is there a way we can offer DR for those customers or portability for those customers in again a more lighter weight, more dialed in way? And yeah, you hit on it, Phil, is that's our Nutanix Files offering that can now run directly on AWS itself, running in cloud native AMIs using cloud storage as well, but it's the exact same files you know and love. So highly available, highly performant file shares, data lens that can monitor those for active ransomware attacks and help you respond in very close to real-time events or rollback after an attack has occurred,
Mhm.
and also replicate, right? How do I offer, file shared level DR for my SMB and NFS workloads? Well, this is the easy answer for that as well, right? So if I'm migrating to cloud, if I'm migrating across clouds, or even, doing production in the cloud and DR on-prem, which is, also something we can do just as easily as we can go the other direction. This now lets us offer those capabilities and support customer choice anywhere you choose to.
Yeah, it strikes me at this point in the conversation that, we're talking about these concepts and stuff. And really, we're 45 minutes into today's webinar. We haven't talked hyperconverged. This is everything kind of happening in addition to the amazing hyperconverged platform that exists, in which, a lot of these things are built on top of. But um, the extension of the company is really beyond that. The goal is that there will be choice beyond hyperconverged as Nutanix moves forward. Um, Another great example of that is your enterprise AI product. And around that, you have an NVIDIA AI enterprise announcement that came out during the show, too. So, double kind of question, can you introduce Nutanix Enterprise AI, what it is, and then also what is this announcement in terms of NVIDIA?
Yeah, so Nutanix Enterprise AI is our deployment and governance layer around how do I offer LLMs to the business with performance, with security, and with privacy, right? Because we find that the larger and or more regulated a customer is, the more they care about private AI versus
Mhm.
public AI or AI as a service. How can I run it behind my firewall? How can I move from a cost model of moving from, like, say, pay per token to I paid for the GPU. I'm going to use the GPU.
Right.
Um, and how do I guarantee that as I do this, I'm not training someone else's model with my own data, right? That's my real crown jewels. So those are a lot of things that Nutanix AI solves for, along with really the day two life cycling, right? Because I like to joke that, like, literally everyone that uses electrons is an NVIDIA partner, right? But anyone can also build a stack one time. How do I
Mhm.
offer lifecycle management and governance around that? That's what NAI solves for is, when I see that there's a new model available or a new version of my preferred model in the Hugging Face repository, in the NVIDIA repository, or maybe I trained my own. How do I take that, put that into a sandbox, let my developers test it real fast, gain confidence in it? Because of course, confidence in AI is really the name of the game lately. It's not just proof of life; it's prove to me that this is making good decisions. Um, how do I then roll that into a test environment? How do I then move it into a live production API endpoint that my developers can then go consume against? And so that's kind of the life cycle that NAI is really solving for, is who's allowed to use which models on which GPUs and at what scale. And then how do I do that repeatably? A theme about this entire call, automation, right? How do I do that automatically and more easily than reinventing the wheel every single time? And so, of course, then also letting customers use the latest and greatest stuff that NVIDIA also offers, right? Not just NIM, but also
Yeah.
NeMo. Uh,
So I was going to jump in there real quick because I do
please.
want to make a point. When we talk about Nutanix Enterprise AI, everything we just talked about in terms of NKP, Kubernetes, that's where enterprise AI is going to run. So Nutanix Enterprise AI, is deployed into a Kubernetes platform. Does not have to be NKP. Could be AWS's Kubernetes. It could be Azure Kubernetes. Could be Google Kubernetes. This is an application that's being put out there that's a UI to help you as an infrastructure person manage access and security to AI resources and GPUs. And so it's going to give you dashboards and charts and things that are more approachable where you're not necessarily having to manage all this stuff and figure it out from a command line. It's an easy button if you're trying to do AI in your own data center with private data. And so it kind of thinks through that. And as Jaira said, the life cycle piece of it is huge. But it's really Genesis is around security and managing the resources, the physical resources required for AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you
And,
were saying,
and
just
can also
kind of,
run anywhere, right? Can run anywhere you're
yeah,
running containers applications touching GPUs, which is, to be a little reductive, that's what an AI app is containers plus GPUs plus data you want to do
right.
inference against. Um, but yeah, so then meeting with the NVIDIA enterprise AI, right, with their latest like Blackwell style architectures and validated designs, this can now run fully on Nutanix, right, using NIM for inference and microservices for NeMo, and moving into that agentic deployment model as well, where I'm not just running one model, I might run 10. They might act as a chorus. I might have some that are doing reality checks, some that are doing security checks, some that are doing, confidence measuring right around is this actually a worthwhile answer to give to the user. So that actually increases the amount of AI, not lessens it, right? So now where I used to run one model for one app, and of course if that blew up and my token cost went up, then I get a lovely bill about that. Now on hardware that you own and lifecycle and govern, now that consumption is much more simpler, and I can grow in quantified steps, a node at a time or a GPU at a time, and I can also run more models in parallel to make sure that these answers that I'm giving to my users or to my staff, I can trust them more or have more parameters and metrics around that to ensure that I'm I'm actually driving business outcomes with my AI deployments.
Yeah, and so when we talk about this, you know, intersection between NVIDIA and Nutanix, there's a couple different ways that you can consume it. Enterprise AI, as you said, is available anywhere. But there is a opinionated stack as well. It's called GPT in a Box version 2. And so that's going to be the full Nutanix stack, an easy button for customers that wanted to adopt this. And so I know there's interest there from different companies that we're talking with. And so there is an easy path, and then there's a path where you get to have a lot more control and say in how you deploy. So if you have your own opinions, you could go DIY. If you don't have strong opinions, you could buy it all direct as an integrated SKU.
Very true. Yeah.
Now, the other part of this is agentic AI. So this is a fairly new concept. Heck, AI is a new concept. So we talked a lot about agentic AI, and that is the future. So as we're kind of wrapping up today, what is agentic AI? How is it different than what we've been doing with Chat GPT and the large language models? What's next?
So it's here's my poor man's definition is agentic is multiple models all working together, right? Doing different things, a little bit of like division of labor style thinking here around, my users ultimately asking one question, right? Like why were sales better last year or what happened in Q2 or whatever. But that getting that answer might involve lots of different things, right? How do I parse the question, right? Because ultimately I need to do, text to query style translation. I might need, stuff like RAG, which is AI powered search. I might need data analysis models. I might need to check, is this user allowed to ask about how sales went in Q2, right? Governance models around what are they allowed to see. I need to, of course, synthesize that data together. And I also ultimately need to give them an answer, right? Which is going to be back to like just standard Gen AI, large language model and prediction algorithms all working together. So they asked one question. I might use 10 LLMs or Gen AI models to answer that question together. And agentic means we're using this together to create that right kind of choral chorus style effects. Um, and with that, I don't necessarily need to deploy all of them individually. I might have some of them that are reused across multiple work streams, right? Because that maybe my governance agent to say, what data are you allowed to see? It wakes up, it answers that question one time, it goes back to sleep. It could power a bunch of different workflows here. all in parallel. My RAG models might be very much busier more of the time as they're crawling over my data sets and doing intelligent searching for results there. So agentic is getting even closer um, to how do I ask a question, get a smarter answer more quickly, um, and using more intelligence to build even therefore more intelligence, right? Kind of intelligence compounding.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the underscore for the hardware announcement that also went with NVIDIA, and that was the GPU Direct, where it brings together the storage and the GPUs with a faster way to communicate with one another. That's something Nutanix has announced support for NVIDIA GPU Direct. So again, getting those two things closer together so that you can get the answer faster and you can process faster and be more productive.
My usual joke is, I mean, none of us would have used ChatGPT 2 years ago if it took 20 seconds to answer, right? So AI is a workload where really, truly cutting edge blistering speed actually does matter. Similar to EUC from 20 years ago, right? Like no one invests in slow VDI, right?
Yeah,
End user experience is a dramatically important metric, not just for successful deployment, but also for user adoption and SAT.
absolutely. It takes me back to, early examples of system of record versus systems of engagement. Facebook, it's less important that every user sees the same post at the same time. And so, the big distributed system can give different answers, it can give different results. But your accounting system definitely should not be giving back different results. You want that to be the same every time.
Yeah. Instant
It,
consistency, not eventual. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of the same thing that we're talking about here. Although it's interesting with AI, you want the speed of that system of engagement with the accuracy of the system of record. And so it's an interesting combination that we're chasing in the AI space. But it's fun too because it's new and it is rapidly evolving.
It is very fun. It's some of the, I mean, in my time in IT, it's the most I've seen so many different end user customers all focusing on like app development, right? Not just app integrations or replatforming.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're in the Wild West again in terms of rapid change and love it. Love it. That's why I got into this to begin with. Well, we appreciate the time listening along today. We covered what 12 different topics that were covered at .next. There's certainly more things, all sorts of goodness, incremental changes, AOS 7.0, AHV10, happy birthday. Like there's all sorts of things going on within Nutanix. And so if any of these pique your interest, please do reach out to me at philip1l.sellers@xentegra.com. I'd love to be able to connect with you. For everyone registered for today's webinar, you're going to get a copy of this slide. There are links to posts. You can go deeper. And again, we're always here to help from a strategy and an advisement standpoint. And if we happen to get any at all stuck, I'll reach out and phone a friend and call Jira, have him join our call too. So I always appreciate the smart man in the room. And thank you for joining me today, Jira.
Thanks for having me.
And for everybody else, thanks for spending time with us. We'll catch you on the next webinar or podcast here from XenTegra. Hope you have a great day.